Hello and welcome to another episode of Andy's Chomping at the Bit, brought to you by Big Andy Media, the official sponsor of every Friday episode of Andy's Chomping at the Bit. We're here straight from the corner of King Tut's tomb, and we're going to do an episode today on handling rejection. And so this actually wasn't the topic I was originally planning on doing, but I was actually at a meeting yesterday, and we had these little sticks with random topics that people get to pull. You know, it's a sport group meeting. I'm not going to name which one because of affiliation restrictions. Anyway, and that was the stick I drew, essentially. It was handling rejection. And it caught me off guard because, actually, it had two topics on the stick. One side was recovery and relapse, and the other side was handling rejection. And I'm really comfortable with talking about recovery and relapse, but I hadn't really taken the time in depth to talk about the other side. So I've now had over 24 hours to really think about this topic, and so I'm going to go on it. First, past tense, and I'm going to try working to the present tense to help hopefully show the change in perspective on it. Also to show there's still work to be done. But anyway, let's going back. So one of the things, so rejection goes beyond just relationships. That's a big one. It was, at least for me, for a long time, but it goes beyond that. That was always my fear when, let's go to middle school, school dances, high school even for that matter. Asking someone to dance. That was always the possibility, And so, and that's the thing. It was handling rejection. It was the fear of it. That was really the culprit. It wasn't the rejection in itself. It was the fear of rejection, and it paralyzed a lot of growth early on. A lot of chance taking, I guess you'd say, opportunities that I passed on because of that fear of rejection. And like I said, it doesn't go just to relationships, it goes career-wise too. When I originally had sought out to be a singer-songwriter, I took some chances, recording and everything, but one of the things that I was scared of was failing. And the reason I was scared of failing, the primary thing, is I heard all it took was a couple bad reviews, and all of a sudden I was scared that maybe, if they didn't like what they heard, maybe everyone wouldn't. That rejection concept, that fear that I really never, in performing, I didn't really have much early on in my life. And I really didn't face it much overall in general. But I did face it a couple times, and it was enough to plant the seed of doubt for a while in me. And so instead of pursuing and taking that risk and dealing with that rejection that I'd got and putting it into perspective, I started searching more or less for a plan B in case things failed. And the reality was, by going searching for a plan B, I abandoned plan A. I didn't even really go after music. I spent a lot of time holding the title, but I didn't actually put in the work or the effort required. And so it set me back on that. It also affected relationships. That's no secret. When you're afraid of rejection, which I was for a long period, then obviously you don't handle it well. You let one moment from the past affect several potential moments or potential opportunities, I'll put it, down the road. You get, I don't want to say beat because it's not a competition, and rejection doesn't necessarily mean beat. But in that sense, you let it affect you in multiple other situations later down the line, and that's what I did so frequently. Because I remember the experience. I remember the few times where the pain was there, and there was one incident where it really hurt. It was, don't get me wrong, I was not the most innocent person either on a lot of things, but rumors were created that were painful, and I think that was the scarring experience from one particular rejection that really stunted me for a long time in many ways going forward. But here's the thing. I'm aware now that that was what was affecting me. It is no longer an excuse today. I cannot let a moment, in which is now a very distant past, influence essentially situations for today. I can't let. I can't use it as an excuse. I've had plenty of time to address it now, and I have addressed it, which is very, very crucial in so many ways for my recoveries. When I find something that bothered me in the past, something that scarred me in the past, to address it. I can't be the victim if I'm aware of it. That's the reality of it. I've had plenty of time to address it. I was the victim at the time, but I'm not a victim today. That's the truth in a lot of scenarios. I literally had a quote in the Daily Biscuit today from Helen Keller about self-pity. So if you want to check that out, I go into depth on that one. Or I give the full quote in that one. But essentially, it never helped me in that scenario. So, and it also used to cripple me even with jobs. That was always the thing, because I think rejection ties in with uncertainty when it comes to the fear. And so when you have rejection and it's something that hurts or makes you uncomfortable, the next time you face a similar situation, that your mind, or at least my mind, goes to those moments and remembers those moments. So the difference, though, between... Well, I'm going to finish up real quick. It carried over even to my addiction. Right down to the... both the crack addiction and the sex addiction were both based on fear of rejection, in a sense. I didn't like the idea of potentially being turned away, and so drugs numbed it out, and sex in various ways avoided it, numbed it out. So it it held me back for a long time. The failure, I guess, not failure. Well, yeah, at that point it was a failure to manage or handle properly rejection. Because, like I said, I let it cripple me by that. Not deliberately, but I did. So here's where the change comes. My newer approach in life is that everything that we face is an opportunity. If a relationship doesn't work out, or rejection, however you want to see it, right? There's a possibility. In the event that things don't work out, I can learn from it. I can learn a little bit about why it didn't work out, sometimes. I can look internally and say, okay, did what part am I responsible for? What part was simply out of my control? And find out, from those things, how I can improve. Not necessarily improving as far as always as far as my personality, because sometimes it's simply not a match, which means that I have the opportunity to learn and develop a better understanding of who would be the right person for me, and I understand that it leads the opportunity to find the right person in those moments. So by thinking in that process, tough moments become less scary. Even within big Andy media, it's not always easy to talk about big Andy media, surprisingly, to people that I'm meeting, because oftentimes people ask, how long have you had the company? And I tell them, and it makes people shy sometimes away. Not always, but sometimes. Where things are at, not always the easiest topic, but I don't let it get me down too much. I won't lie. At the moment, sometimes it can rattle, but I understand there's things don't always happen in the time that we want them to happen. Things don't always happen with the people that we want them to happen with. That's kind of the journey of life. I think, myself included, at least in some sense still, we have gotten to this point of being spoiled with instant gratification. Everything we do, from their cell phones, to email, everything. Used to be when you were gone, people could leave if you had an answering machine, they could leave a message at your home. And when you got home, you could check it and try calling them back if they were home. Nowadays, if someone messages you or they call you and you don't get back with them within 30 minutes or an hour, they start to panic. They start to get uncomfortable, because we're used to instant gratification. But the same thing, I feel, I think that affects us as far as the process and when we do get rejection, because, at least in my case, you get frustrated. You don't like the wait. You got used to not waiting because of technology. But you learn. At least I learned, and still am learning, to grasp the go with the flow, or not go with the flow. Accept the process and accept what I can control, and not try forcing things that I can't control. And that goes beyond just relationships. That goes to even employment. I believe I've mentioned in the last podcast, or the one before that I am currently in the running, I guess you could say, for an amazing opportunity. I'm not going to go into the details on this. Eventually I will. But it's an opportunity where I'll be able to help other people who have similar struggles that I have, just in a earlier point, as far earlier stage in potentially dealing with some of these struggles and setbacks. So, like I said, I'm in the running for it, but I haven't got it yet. That's the thing. And so, when looking at that as an example, I love the position. I really am hoping they get it. It'll go great, not just with Big Andy Media. It'll give me a better insight from even my understanding on myself. It'll help, which then helps the podcast even. But where, where the thing is, there's two possible outcomes here. The one, I get the job, right? And then I get to do all those things. I get to use my skills. I get to use my experience to help. And then there's the other side, right? Or I potentially don't get it. And that's not the end of the world either. I learned from the opportunities that I got for interviewing. I learned from the experience. And I have the comfort of knowing that it just wasn't meant to be in that scenario. And that there is still plenty of opportunities for me in life. There's still plenty of employment opportunities in addition to Big Andy Media. And it might even in that situation be a sign that, putting more into Big Andy Media. But like I said, there's two directions that can go. And all I can control in these situations like that is I can control how I appear in front of them. I can prepare, and I can control how I present myself. I can present myself in the best possible way of my ability. But after that, it's out of my control. I don't know who the other candidates may be for the position. I don't control the people that are doing the hiring process. All I can do is present the best me and hope that it's enough to influence their decision in a positive manner for offering a position to me. But regardless of the direction, there's opportunity both directions. There's, if it's rejected the opportunity to work in that position, then there's opportunities in other directions. Separating a little bit from the moments, not like detached completely, but putting it into perspective that there's no singular event like that, like whether a person rejects you, whether a employment opportunity is rejected. No one point is an end all. Learning that there's opportunities, there might be pain with the rejection. There might be a point where you have to give yourself a good hard look in the mirror, which I've had plenty of those, and so far the mirror has not broken, so that's positive. But coincidentally, I'm looking at a mirror over here. Anyway, it's not always going to be easy. That's the reality, and that's okay. Some of the best things in life, some of the biggest growing points in life, come from some of the most uncomfortable and often painful experiences. That's what I've personally found, and through speaking with others, that's a common trend, that uncomfortable is often the step in growth. It's a direction of it. So going back to the initial topic of handling rejection and the origin of that, when I had got that popsicle stick that had one side said recovery and relapse, and the other side said handling rejection. The comfortable choice on that, I had two choices on the topics. The comfortable choice was talking about recovery and relapse, because I do it frequently, and I'm open with sharing my story. But talking about handling rejection is something that I had not really done much of, especially with a group of people in the same room. Surprisingly, it's a lot easier to do it in front of this camera. In person, it's a little more challenging. But that's why it's important to do it still. It was an uncomfortable topic, and a topic that I really didn't have much preparation for, because I did not expect that to show up, which is why I chose that topic. When I was in treatment in 2022, I was fortunate that my primary counselor she she had some very wise words of wisdom to share with me. When you're presented with a choice, when you're presented with choices, the choice that's harder, usually the choice that's harder or less comfortable, is the right choice. So when you're at a crossroads, essentially, when you have a decision, what am I going to do here? Usually the choice that's harder is the right choice. We typically gravitate towards the point of least resistance, the point of least pain, the easy way out. But often that's avoiding. Not always, but often. So, and I think that in itself, the taking the path of least resistance, is because we're afraid of the rejection, or at least that was me. Failure and rejection often, I feel, run hand in hand, as far as the mentality and effect. So, like I said, those are the areas I've grown, but I am not perfect on that. I can tell you that right now, especially in the relationship side. I've gotten really good at it in a lot of other areas. So the relationship side is much, much better than it ever used to be. Much better. But it still lingers in certain areas. So, one of the areas, and I the fear is still there. I'm handling it a heck of a lot better. Sorry, and that is addressing parts of my past that often are, for some people, deal breakers, and getting involved in a relationship. And I don't hold it against people for it being a deal breaker. Everyone has their choices on things, and not everyone has to fit to the same rules as far as what they want in a relationship, and what their red flags are, what their deal breakers are. That's normal. You can have really good people that just don't line up, and but sometimes it's still uncomfortable talking about those moments. Have you been to jail before? Yeah, I have. Do you struggle with addiction? Yeah, I did. What's your living situation? Well, sober living house. Before that, parents' house. Not exactly the highlight reel that you often want to say early on, but you got to be honest too. That's how I looked at it. Does it lead to some rejection? Yeah, it does. But it also helps lead to the right person. The person that's meant to be will appreciate the honesty, and they will take the time to see. And this is just my situation. I'm not saying the right person for everyone's like this. The right person for me will see the honesty. They will see the maturity, the growth, the emotional intelligence within the scope of things, and take that in consideration. And so I'm okay with going through the process and waiting until the right person comes along. And there's been people that have come along that are wonderful people, and we get along, and they're okay with those parts of my past, but they're still not the right fit. And that's nothing against them. That's nothing against me. It just means that we didn't line up enough to work out. And that's no hard feelings in my mind. Sometimes we might not share the same values. We might not quite line up in certain aspects of our personality. And then there's other moments where everything lines up great, but almost to a fault. We might share an addiction, or another trait that makes what would usually be a great fit, just not the right fit. So that's part of the journey with rejection, and understanding that when it happens, it's not the end all, it's a learning opportunity. And the right opportunities, the right person, the right job, those things come to your life at the right moment. You can agree with that or disagree with it. That's just my take on it. And it's a very peaceful take. It helps me grow without letting failure and fear hold me back. And I still make mistakes. I still fail. But I get to learn now. I don't beat myself up. I get to learn. So that's today's episode of Andy's Chomping at the Bit. There will be, let's see, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, there'll be an event going on in Manistee by our Spotlight charity from Big Andy Media. It'll be Cove, Communities Overcoming Violent Encounters. They're going to be doing a, I have it in front of me, I want to say it's called Walk a Mile in Her Shoes event. And it's at Memorial Park, if I remember correctly. It's $10. Bring high heels, because it's literally you walk a mile. And high heels in it. It's to bring awareness, being it's Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Great opportunity. And then that same weekend, but that Sunday, will be another performance for Singing for a Cause. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll see you again on Monday for another Daily Biscuit. Hopefully on Monday. I've been a little off on the timing. But nonetheless, there will be 2 Daily Biscuits next week, and then another Andy's Chomping at the Bit. So take care.